Welcome to Conversations with Barbara. My guest today is Donna Wald, who is president of Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, Cape Cod. Welcome to the program, Donna, and thank you so much for being here to tell us about the grandmothers and their mission to change the gun culture in America. That's a tall order, and we're eager to hear what the grandmothers have been doing. Perhaps we should start with how it all began.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and us. Grandmothers Against Gun Violence was founded on the Cape in 2013, right after the Sandy Hook tragedy, by a woman named Linda Alhart. She was driving home when the Sandy Hook tragedy happened, and she was coming home from a holiday celebration, much like the one that was happening at Sandy Hook. And she heard about this and she was totally distraught. And she simply said to her husband, "I can't let this stand." So she formed a little group, Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, and away they went. And now we're almost 12 years old, which is amazing because it's hard for the little nonprofits to survive that long. So we are very excited. We've done more strategy. We're just really happy to be where we are. We're a 501c3, nonpartisan, inclusive organization. Just to be clear, we respect the Second Amendment as it is written, but our feeling is that gun ownership also has certain societal responsibilities. Individuals who are not gun owners also have rights to go about their daily lives without fear of gun violence. Our mission has always been to educate on gun violence, collaborate with other community groups and gun violence prevention groups that share our vision, and advocate for common sense gun legislation to reduce gun violence on both the state and federal level.
And it seems to me that one of the valuable things that you have been doing is making people aware of some things that, there's misinformation and maybe some of the myths. We hear so much that those who perpetrate a violent act with a gun have a mental health issue. Can you tell us what some of the misinformation and correct for it?
Yes, I will. And it is the myths and misinformation that make it so hard for us to do our work. And in a while, I'll go back and tell you about the work we're doing in Massachusetts. But the National Rifle Association's assault on the truth, because they are the ones themselves and the gun manufacturers who have basically driven all these myths. And just so we all know, that marketing of the myths and misinformation is driven by money and ideology. Two books that give you a really good look at this, if you're interested, are American Carnage by Tom Gabor and Fred Gutenberg, and another one called Firepower: How the NRA Turned Gun Owners into a Political Force by Matthew Lacombe. And these are really interesting if you like history and if you like to understand the origin of this problem, because you can't really work it without understanding the origins. So the majority of the mistruths and misinformation started about 1980 in response to declining arms industry sales. There was a decline in shooting sports. America was becoming more urbanized, and the changing US population was not really tending toward firearms. So as an industry, they had an issue on their hands. They needed to sell more weapons, market differently. They needed to do something. So they kind of changed their focus from being a marksmanship and gun safety organization to a powerful lobby group that basically built a narrative to oppose any restrictions on gun ownership or the suitability of the owner.
I see. So that you're suggesting that maybe the Second Amendment wasn't historically in the public notice. It wasn't discussed.
Right. It became the center of the ideology and the rest of this marketing messaging. So really, the ability of the NRA to shape the political outlook and actions of its supporters shows how the organization has fashioned a distinct worldwide view around gun ownership and its use to mobilize its supporters. Right now, protecting gun rights actually holds an equal place with protecting our citizenry from gun abuses, which is pretty sad, but it's a testament to how this messaging was so powerful. One of the myths is this: you're safer with a gun. Well, that was part of the stoking of the fear to buy a gun because you would be safer. It rested on self-protection from crime, social unrest, and governmental tyranny, which brings back to our history, obviously.
But there is evidence, I understand, that that's not true.
There is total evidence that that is not true. And it's been an ongoing debate between the misinformation people and the information people for years now. So the messaging that having a gun makes you safer has fueled gun sales. And we've seen that when there's social unrest, gun sales go up. Now we have a safe storage gun campaign, and it's a total refutation of the safe gun defense. It shows you the risks inherent in bringing a gun into your home as opposed to the opportunities to use it for self-defense. You're 5 times more likely to have a gun incident in your home the minute you bring it in the door. Of the annual firearm deaths in America, 2/3 of that number. So in other words, let's say we had 45,000 deaths last year, which we did, 2/3 of that were suicides, and half of that was gun suicides. So every day in America, lives are lost senselessly because a firearm was in a home, not securely stored, and related risks were not assessed properly. In other words, what's the difference between you having a firearm incident in your home and the likelihood somebody is actually going to break into your house where you need to use that gun? So what we talk about is preventable, predictable tragedies that happen because you could have a gun in your home that is not securely stored. And we know, contrary to popular belief, that many guns are in homes and they are not properly stored. So what do you get? You get unintentional shootings of children who find the gun, which is not stored properly. You get stolen firearms when someone comes in to just do a burglary in your house, knowing you're not there, and there's your firearm, easily accessible. And those guns that are stolen always turn into crime guns. You get suicides that are impulsive. And by that, I mean, a lot of suicides happen within 5 to 20 minutes, where the ideation is roaming around in one's mind. And were the means of a firearm not available, they probably would not end up committing suicide by gun. And the saddest part about suicide by gun is that it is 90% fatal. So
Really?
yeah, so it's not like drugs where maybe somebody finds you or whatever. They are 90% fatal. And the strange part is that people that try to commit suicide by gun do not usually go on to seek any other means in their life. So if they didn't do it and you caught it in time, there's a good chance that they are not going to be a recommitter, as most people think is true.
So there's strong evidence that if a gun is present, it will happen. The suicide will happen. Yes, that does make a lot of sense, because there isn't any time to rethink.
No, there isn't. And they just sit, and our suicide rate among teenagers is escalating.
Yes.
And when you think about teenagers, they don't tend to have typically very long horizons. So what happens is what's ever happening to them then is the ultimate in their mind. So they are even more prone to seek a quick alternative.
Yes.
And it's my favorite saying about it is it's a permanent solution to a passing crisis.
Yeah, yes. And then we hear so much about the state of a violent event, that shooter was probably having a mental health episode, and so that the solution is to improve our outlets for mental health. And what is the evidence for that?
Well, to me, and to many in the movement, although mental health can be an issue with here, it's really an easy way to dismiss us from addressing the real causes of gun violence. It's used by politicians, gun lobbies, and manufacturers. And the reason it's used is that it's a dodge. And it's like, oh my heavens, they're all mentally ill, whatever. The majority of people with mental illness will use a gun on themselves in a suicide rather than others. And that is a given statistic. For any determined killer, whether mentally ill or not, we have to address the accessibility of the gun to be effective.
And yes, I happen to think that isn't it the case that in countries where there is a great deal of mental health, there is not necessarily the degree of gun violence that we have in the United States?
That is exactly true, because people that are mentally ill are not any more likely to commit a violent crime than the general population. In fact, they're way reduced from the general population. So when we do that, we overlook the fact that shootings can be caused by a multitude of drivers not connected with mental illness. And here we're getting into the rates of mental illness here are relatively the same as other countries. Yet we had 600 mass shootings in the US in 2020 and 2021, while other countries have very few homicides and 1 or 2 mass shootings a year. So, mass shootings are not predictable on mental health criteria. The largest categories of mass shootings involve ongoing disputes and situations, small groups and retaliatory cycles of somebody shot somebody, now somebody's got to shoot someone else. And this is things people overlook all the time. You do not have to be mentally ill to exhibit rage, racism, or have anger management issues, all of which we have seen result in mass shootings.
Yes.
So when we just go, they're all mentally ill, we miss the connections between hopelessness, gun violence, and despair, and the socio and economic inequalities that exist, that give guns power. We know that there are higher gun homicide rates in places where people live in distressed circumstances. So really, what you come to when you use this kind of an argument is changes in gun laws are avoided because they're all mentally ill, obviously. And social underlying conditions such as the state of mental health care in our country are not addressed.
Yes, yes.
So where does this leave us? Well, fighting myths and misinformation. Myths and misinformation are wrapped firmly in political, patriotic, and sometimes religious ideology. And it's a very hard nut to crack, as sometimes when you have these arguments, you go right to the core of people's identities.
Yes.
That's where it gets really difficult because they feel they're being attacked as a person, and a rational argument becomes really tough to do then. Maybe we should go back to the Massachusetts gun bill. Can we do that?
Yes, yes. It's interesting because many of us are quite complacent, thinking that Massachusetts is one of the places where we have a lot of good, safe gun laws. But maybe we shouldn't be complacent.
Well, actually, we do have good gun laws, but you have to remember that as the technology develops, the firearms technology, and as the legal atmosphere changes, you can never have enough updating of your laws because
yes, yes.
someone is going to challenge them. So I'm going to talk about the Firearms Modernization Act, which passed this July in 2024. It's funny because I was looking at our last interview, and when I was on last, our legislators were just going out on a tour to take input for the law. So that was sort of interesting. Mm-hmm. So recently we passed a law, and it was through concerted action by all the gun violence prevention groups, our legislators, some national gun violence prevention groups. And this bill was passed, making Massachusetts one of the highest ranking in gun laws in the United States. And just to mention that Massachusetts also has the lowest homicide rate in the US other than Hawaii. So we can see charts. We see charts with gun laws and with homicides. And you can see very clearly when you look those up that the laws, the gun laws, the states with the best gun laws have the lowest homicide rates. It's like irrefutable evidence.
Yes, very important evidence that we really need to think about.
Yeah, so what the legislators did is they conducted a tour across Massachusetts to get everyone's input. Gun owners, gun violence prevention groups, normal citizens. And I went to one of them and it was pretty good. There was a lot of debate. Some of it was pretty heated, but the bill finally passed, and it's a forward-thinking strategic action, which I really like because it strengthens our existing laws and it adds new laws, which were sorely needed. And much of this bill was in response to the Bruin decision in 2022 in New York, which basically, in a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that New York's law to limit carry was unconstitutional, and that the ability to bear arms in public was a constitutional right covered by the Second Amendment. Now that was something we had never seen, and immediately states everywhere were going, oh no, now what's going to happen to our laws?
Yes, I understand that New York law required people to present a logical cause for them to carry.
Yes.
And that was simply abolished.
Yeah, that was simply abolished. So as I said, then other states are looking at it because here, when you go to get open carry, you have to sit with a sheriff.
Yeah, yeah.
And so everybody's looking at that and saying, okay, we got to get our laws tighter because this is not going to stand in a state with really good gun laws. So what they did in this bill was really quite impressive. First of all, they banned ghost guns and 3D printed guns. Now, we were all looking forward to that happening because these guns are crime guns. These are guns where you can buy a kit and go into your basement, and depending on how good you are at this, it can either take you a half an hour or 7 hours to do all the drilling and whatever that is required to make this kit into a gun. Now,
shocking.
Shocking. And the reason that they could never be legislated was they were parts. They weren't a full firearm. So what we did is we said, no, they're a firearm. And we're going to regulate them the way we regulate firearms. And we did. And we did the same thing with the 3D printed guns that come off the printer. So it basically takes away the desire to make a ghost gun because now it is the law that you have to serialize it with a number, every single part, which means it's traceable, it's detectable. Yeah. So from a crime angle, that totally takes away the whole reason. They didn't want them traceable, they didn't want them detectable. We also put restrictions, and this was directly in response to Bruin. We put restrictions on carry in open spaces, such as polling places, schools, and many municipal and federal buildings, because we saw it coming. And if we didn't do that, we were going to be having a problem. Something that was really exciting is we got improved data collection, and that relates to licensing, to firearm purchased, and firearms used in crimes. So there's a lot of data sharing now. In out of our state, in between the state agencies, and that gives us a really good look at what's actually happening so that we can make better policy.
Yeah. Oh, and was there some effort to put some teeth into what we call the red flag laws?
Yes, the red flag laws, and this is my favorite part because the red flag laws are laws that can, through a civil judicial process, take a gun from someone who is unfit or presents a clear and present danger to someone else. So in the beginning, all we had was a spouse or a family member way back, because this is an old law. I mean, we've had the red flag law for a while. But when we looked at all the school shootings and everything else, we really wanted a stronger red flag law. So we increased our red flag law to now include a spouse, family home member, a dating partner, a school officials such as principals and university deans or whatever they are when they're a university head, mental health professionals, normal health professionals, and clinical counselors. So it's very empowering because it gives people at least the opportunity to feel they're empowered if they want to pursue it in their own profession.
Yeah.
So that one I really liked. We also raised the age of a semi-automatic rifle purchase from 18 to 21. And that's good because we see a lot of this semi-automatic action in that younger age bracket. So we really like that. We have better and more frequent gun dealer inspections, which was really awful because when we looked at it, we saw that they weren't being inspected at all in most cases. So now it has gone to the state police to be the ones to inspect the dealers because they have more time. We have a harassment prevention order, which we never had before, which means if you're being harassed with a firearm, it's against the law.
Gosh, this is just strikes me. It's a very comprehensive, excellent law to protect people.
Well, it is, because we had a bunch of really very strange things that were happening. Another law is if you discharge a firearm at a building, like you hear in the city a lot, you see these drive-by shootings where people are
yes.
shooting. That is also against the law. So, you know, there's many safety measures in this bill about alcohol limits and all sorts of things. So overall, it's a really good, forward-thinking public safety bill. And so because it is such a good bill, and because it really, other than the ghost gun, it's really not touching on anything major that's new. It's just a safety bill, a data collection bill, a firearms licensing bill.
And which strikes me as absolutely common sense, a common sense bill.
It really is. It's really just a common sense bill. I mean, if you talk to anybody reasonable, they'd be hard put to argue with this unless they had a money motive or some other motive that isn't common sense. So now we find ourselves in a really bad place. In that the minute that bill was signed by the governor, a group of people calling themselves the Civil Rights Coalition of all things, and that group is, just so we're all clear, it's composed of gun shops, gun manufacturers, gun owners in the GOAL organization, that's GOAL, are in the Civil Rights Coalition, and their leader said they were funded with a gift of $100,000 from Smith & Wesson, who is a gun manufacturer,
shocking.
In order to do what they want to do here. And here's what they want to do. First of all, they wanted to put the bill on hold for 2 years while they got a petition together to put it on the midterm ballot as a voter referendum. Well,
that would be 2026.
2026. So that would delay the bill for 2 years. Well, your governor saw that and she said, no. So she signed it in as an emergency bill, which immediately puts it in force immediately. Whereas they had a little bit of time before they did that it wouldn't be immediate. So now it's in force immediately. So then they were able to get their signatures and they presented a petition to, I believe it's the Secretary of State's office, most likely. And I have heard that after the election, which is now, the petition will be vetted. And if they have enough signatures, it will go on the 2026 ballot as a voter referendum.
Oh dear.
To repeal the bill. So it's kind of strange because this is really the first time we've ever dealt with a voter issue.
Right.
Normally you lobby your legislators and whatever. So really legally and stuff, we're really not sure, although it's being investigated by people who know what that will entail. But in the meantime, in this year of 2025, we are going to continue to educate on this bill. Because a lot of people don't even know it was passed, and then the referendum is going to come up and they're going, what is this thing? So our first leg will be intense education, spreading the word, and to look out for it. And then as we get closer to the midterm, there will be other strategies and tactics, obviously, because we don't intend to lose this bill.
This is absolutely critical because if it's a ballot initiative, it will fall into the hands of the voters. And if they're not educated, if they don't understand that it just would be, this wonderful law will be just repealed. We can't let that happen.
Well, yeah, and the scary part for that I was thinking of is if you repeal this law, a lot of this is just an add-on to our other laws. So then, do you not open up challenges to our base?
Oh,
I have no idea. It could happen
yeah.
because I've seen it happen, but the bad thing about the midterms is the turnout is always low. So we need to get an increased percentage of turnout in the state for that midterm when it happens, because from experience, these other people here can turn their people out. So we can't have a lackluster turnout
Yeah.
on our side in order to save the bill. So that's a concern, but we're on it and we're going to get it done just like we did the first time.
Yes. Well, it's wonderful to know that the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence will be working to educate people. And certainly we have other associations. I'm thinking now of the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence. I'm sure that those groups will be, they're certainly aware of what's happening.
Oh, it will be the same groups that brought the bill to begin with. It will be
Yeah.
the Massachusetts
Yes.
Coalition, of
Yeah.
which we
Yeah.
are a member. It will be us. It will be the new grassroots Massachusetts GVP group. It will be Moms Demand Action. It will be a couple of the national groups, maybe for legal advice.
Yeah.
It will be big. So it's not to worry that we are not all in coalition with us
Yes.
because
Yes.
we are.
Yes.
And this will be because we reside here. This is our primary focus.
Yes, and it's important for viewers to be able to stay in touch by knowing what your website and going to the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence website to be
Yeah.
brought up to date on what's going on, and to again to explain this further so people will be well aware before 2026 of what's going on.
Well, right. And we're also, I would encourage people, and I have the email address, and it is Cape Cod Gag V at gmail.com. And you can
Very
go there and ask to be put on our newsletter list, because
oh,
that's where you're going to be getting all the action of
oh, excellent! They'll be receiving a newsletter.
right
That's
of what we're doing. And
yeah,
because you're not going to know otherwise, because
yeah.
well, you can see us on, Facebook and Instagram, but the best place for what's happening where when is going to be that newsletter. So
Yeah.
gonna want to do that. And I sort of like to talk about other things. Of course, we have a membership fee, but you can get the newsletter without being a member.
Let's repeat that email.
Okay,
Cape
it's
Cod GAGV Grandmas Against Gun Violence at Gmail. Is
that
that
is it. And just say on there, I want to be on your mailing list, and give us your first and last name. We'll have your email there. So um it
good?
it's really great. And then you can go, on our website and you can look at what we do. We have a section called About Us.
Good.
It's a
Good.
section about what we do. We have a rally once a month on the 14th of the month, which is really a good time. Everybody goes there, and we are going to be, once we get going, we will be publicizing that law at the rally.
Oh, good.
We're always there saying gun laws saves lives. And
Yeah.
so there's gonna be a lot of publicity out there. So we really want to get everybody with it. And we're also having a gather up meeting on November 18th at the Cape Cod Synagogue at 10:30 in the morning. So anyone who would like to come, we go through lunch. And it's just, because over this past week, everything has been so crazy. that
Yes.
we just wanted to gather everyone up and thank them for all their efforts on the election and all their efforts for gun violence and basically all their efforts, because this has been a trying time. And I think everybody needs to kind of gather up and be thanked for what they did, because
Yes. Yes.
it's,
And also to be geared for the work that still is standing before us.
yeah, exactly. And I would also like to mention that we rally at the Rotary, Hyannis Rotary, the 14th of every month at 11:30 and 11:30 to 12:30.
I know it is amazing to me that your group has been doing that steadily for a long time.
And we've
Um,
been doing that forever. In fact, 5 years ago, we got an award for doing it
yeah, yes, yes.
from
Oh,
other gun violence folks. And
very,
we've
very
been out
good.
there forever. And sometimes we're 40 strong and sometimes we're 10 strong. But the point is, we're always out there because we really feel that when you see other people standing out like that, you make an impression. No
Yes,
matter what you do, you make an impression.
yeah.
I used to go, this is a personal story. I used to go out with my grandfather fishing, and we would sit in a boat and we'd fish. And when we didn't catch any fish, then we would be throwing rocks. And he always told me, watch that rock you throw because you never know where that ripple's going. And that's the way I feel about almost everything we do. You never know what kind of a ripple you make when you do things. And,
Yes,
we've had people actually go on our website and sign up and say, hey, I saw you at that rally. How do I sign up? So you
yes,
never know.
yeah. It's inspiring. Ripples that go off, and we don't know that they're going to have a strong influence and import. It's so that your grandfather was right. Watch those ripples and keep them going, and so that is really inspiring. I understand that the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence Cape Cod is only one organization. That there is a national organization that includes men and women. Can you tell us something about that?
But yeah, about a year and a half ago, we myself and another grandmother from Kansas City who runs a big group down there. Her group is even bigger than our group. We're talking and we said, this is really a state thing and a federal thing. We can all work in our states and be cozy in our states and whatever, but there are so many states that don't have that attitude, that you need federal laws in order to get them in line
Yes.
and to keep the rest of us safe as well. So we decided to found, it's called Grandparents Uniting for Gun Safety.
Ah,
.org, and anybody can go out there and look. Same thing, sign up in the upper right. You want to sign up? Great, sign up, and then you'll get that newsletter. Because what we thought is we will work federally on that site, and it's a 501c4, which is different than grandmothers. So over there, we do a newsletter once a month, and we do an action alert once a month, which gives you actual things to do on the federal level. It gives you
oh,
people to call to advocate for federal laws. This could not be easier because what we learned was people don't know where to go. They don't know what
yes.
to do. And then they get helpless and they do nothing. So we have boiled this stuff down. So we give you names, we give you
Excellent.
a script, and all you have to do is pick up the phone. And it's really important. We have passed laws in Washington through these calls. It's really important. So that's the federal one, Grandparents Uniting for Gun Safety. And then
That's so encouraging. You're saying that those efforts work. They
they
really do. They really do change things.
they totally work. We saw when the Uvalde shooting happened, which was horrendous. It was one of the worst shootings in the history of anything. And we kept calling to get a gun, kept calling, kept calling, kept calling. At the same point in time, the Biden administration was trying to pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was huge. The first really good gun act passed in years in Washington. But what happened was when Uvalde happened, we did a bunch of calling after Uvalde, and people were infuriated. All of Texas was calling. And John Cornyn, who is a Republican in Texas, they were about ready to go home for vacation, and he was heard to tell somebody, if we don't get behind something and pass something before we go home, it is going to be ugly. And then the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act miraculously picked up the 11 Republican sponsors they need to pass the bill.
Oh gosh, that's very good.
So in between everybody from Texas calling them and the gun violence prevention groups calling them, saying, you got to get this done. This is just,
yes.
And so it works in its pressure. It's all about pressure.
Yes. Public outcry is important.
Well, it is.
Yes. And this is how we get legislation in good gun laws, safe gun laws. Yes.
You do. And I firmly believe, as a note of hope, that the whole conversation on gun violence has changed. When we started this, you could not even talk about guns or gun violence or anything. And it was really bad. But, why I'm hopeful for this, and don't get me wrong, this is a marathon. I mean, recently, now we've had a bit of a setback here nationally. The conversation is bigger on this issue than it's ever been. It's in the news. It's everywhere. The media coverage is expansive. And I think it will be favorable once the rest of this quiets down. Activism on this issue is growing at an incredible rate. Young adults are promoting younger legislators. And that is key, because it is these young ones,
yes,
that are going to inherit this mess. And they're very passionate about it. And there are young adults who are very actively persuading their peers never to pick up a gun, or to never come involved in
that's excellent. It's wonderful coming from people.
Well, it totally is, because they talk to their peers and they listen. And the message there basically is, if you're young and you pick up a gun, there's a good chance you're going to ruin the rest of your life. You're probably going to end up shooting somebody. You're probably going to go to jail or something. I mean, so that is a strong message. And the legislators know that they are accountable on this. And I mean, they really do. They know when their phone starts ringing, it's us. The gun manufacturers are on notice like they've never been before. They're getting sued civilly, which they have never been before. The gun lobbies really don't like to see us. And the cool part is, we can make inroads that have nothing to do with who sits in power in Washington. We can work at our state levels and get our states done. We can educate on safety, which we can educate out there to a very broad audience. So there's a lot that can be done even in the worst of times.
That's very encouraging for viewers maybe who say there's just no hope. No, there is hope. There's work that works. Work to be done that can change things.
There is. And when it always upsets me, when I was at a rally on Saturday in Plymouth, and one woman says, well, nothing's changing. It just keeps happening. Well, first of all, I think this year, unless something brutal happens, we're going to deliver the lowest gun violence rates ever, which could be really exciting. And that's just not true. That's something you see. And I really didn't blame her for saying that because she's not in it the way we're in it. Because when you're in it, there's just so much inspiration and there's so much going on, and we're so much smarter than we were years ago.
Yes. Yes, I can see that in your explanations. We have come to understand so much more about what causes gun violence, and also some learning too about what is not true, and that kind of clarity is really important. And I really would am happy for the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence for doing that kind of work and for raising that kind of information, a kind of awareness of what the truth is about gun violence. And I'm certainly hope that I think that we can post those websites or those emails so that our viewers can get even more information and keep up to date. So there is the godparents. Let's hear that again, and I hope that our director Marilyn Rowland will be able to post this on the screen after this interview. So once again, the Gmail for grandmothers is GAGV, Cape Cod GAGV at gmail.com. And
Right.
and what is it the email of the godparents? Great.
Yeah, the other one, the best way to go is just to go on to the website, which is grandparents uniting for gun safety.org. Go
Good.
up in the upper right hand corner and sign in, and that puts you immediately on that list.
Right. Yes. So I cannot thank you enough for being here and for educating us about this very, very serious issue. Thank you very much, Donna.
Well, I thank you for your time. It means a lot to us when people ask us to speak or come on a show like yours. It really means a lot because this is not exactly the cheeriest issue to work on. But we're always inspired by others that support us.
Yes, yeah. And the need is great because we are awash in guns, and we must not become numb to the issue. Oh, this is just another shooting. It needs to stop. And we need to all come together to stop it.
We do.
So yeah, go on.
We totally do. And it's easy to become numb to it, but you know, when the people I work with and I see the survivors and I see people who have lost children and who have stood up and founded organizations that are gun violence prevention organizations, it's so inspiring. I mean, you just cannot walk away once you get in this because why would you?
Yes, exactly. And so thank you again. And viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll come together again soon for Conversations with Barbara. Thank you. And I want to also thank Marilyn Rowland, who has made this program possible. Thank you very much. And thank you once again. Take care.